we landed on Wadji Island, and we were outnumbered by the Japanese. There was more Japanese there than there was us landing, so we had to wait 30 days for reinforcement. And the company commander told me, he said, you dig a ditch around the perimeter of our area, and the other shovel operators did the same thing. And we dug a 6-foot ditch around, or well, it wasn't 6 feet, it was probably 4 feet deep, and the dirt piled up on top, so you could stand up and look over. And it was for, if we were attacked, everybody was supposed to get in this ditch and protect ourselves. And so somebody they had a job outside of this perimeter, and they sent a truckload of men out to do whatever they were going to do. And on the road back in, which was a makeshift road, the Japanese dropped a tree across the road and blocked their entrance back into our perimeter. And they killed 16 of our men that night. And so they broke through our lines and got in there where we were at, and the ships were all anchored out in the ocean, and they captured a 50 caliber machine gun. It had four barrel 50 calibers. I don't remember anymore. But anymore, they didn't know how to take care of the 50 caliber machine gun, and they fired it so long that the barrels got red hot and warped barrels till they wouldn't shoot anymore. And the next morning we got up when daylight came, there were 6 dead Japanese laying outside our perimeter. That's all there was, and we fought them all night. So, but they said they were dragging them off as we were killing them. And that's about all I know about, remember about it. But anyway, there's a lot more to it.
Tell me about the time a mortar made a hole in your tent.
Well, that happened that night, the same night I was talking about. But the Japanese were dropping mortar shells around, and they dropped one mortar shell and it hit my tent. And consequently, everything I had was ruined. The shrapnel went through the post and ruined the post that held the tent up, and went through all my clothes and bedding, and ruined everything I had. I had to receive all new equipment, and but I was out in the hole in the perimeter ditch that we dug around, and that's how I survived. But it did kill. They killed our mess sergeant and a good friend of mine. He was shot in the neck that night and killed, and he's buried in the Philippines in the Manila area.
Tell me about the amphibious landing made at Noemfoor.
Yeah, well, Noemfoor Island had a long Japanese-built airstrip, and General MacArthur wanted that long one to keep from the Americans to have to build one. So he wanted to take the island back away from the Japanese. It was Japanese inhabited, and so we spent a few days waterproofing all our vehicles, and I think we took the fan belt off, so forth. But we got it it had a coral reef around the island, and we couldn't get up to it to shoreline to drop the ramp so we could drive down the ramp onto. So we had to. They dropped the ramp down in about 5 feet of water, and we were a mile or two offshore. And here come the Americans, Air Force, and they strafed the island. And then our Air Force came over and strafed it, and our battleships bombarded it, and it didn't seem possible for anyone to survive, but they did. And they dropped this ramp down a couple of miles out in the ocean, which was on the coral reef. And the first truck drove down the ramp and onto the reef, and my truck was back several trucks, so I wasn't the first one off. But anyway, I followed the truck ahead of me, and there was trucks that had ran off into holes, which you couldn't tell where they were. And all was sticking out was part of the end gate, and I suppose the people in the truck caught rides going in with us. But anyway, I followed the truck ahead of me, and we'd go around this truck and that one and so forth. And the Japanese were dropping mortar shells among all of us, and sometimes hitting somebody and missing mostly. And there were ships in every direction that took a part in this, and I made it into shore all right, but there's a lot more to that.